everyone, today I'm sharing my birth story with you 5 months later. Oops, a little late. Originally, I was due June 3rd. I was ready for it. I was like, for some reason in my mind, I kept thinking, I think I'm gonna be early, like at least a week early, if not earlier. And for some reason, I also thought, oh, mine's not gonna be as hard as everybody says. Like, it's gonna be easier. Guys, it was like the opposite of what I thought. Complete opposite. So June 5th, actually, my mucus plug started to come out, sorry. And I called my sister and was like, get down here. I'm gonna go into birth. Hopefully you'll make it here because I think it's gonna be really fast. So she got on a plane that night and got down here. The next day, we went shopping. We went and had lunch, her and my mom and I, because nothing was happening. So that night, let's see, June 7th at 2:30 a.m., I started to have contractions. Yes, those lovely contractions. So I didn't say anything. I didn't wake up my husband. I just, after about an hour or so, they started to get a little bit more intense. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go lay in the bathtub, nice warm bath. I can relax and try to get through some of these contractions until they're 3 to 5 minutes apart. And then we go to the hospital. So about 4:35, I texted my mom and sister saying, hey, I'm having contractions, I'm okay, I'm taking a bath. And so of course they immediately come into the bathroom and they're like, are you kidding me? We have to go to the hospital, we have to go now. So I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. They're getting more intense. They're probably like 6 minutes apart. And so we got everything together and we left for the hospital. So we get to the hospital and they check me and they say, well, it looks like you are having contractions, but you are only 1/2 centimeter dilated. That's what I was dilated a week before because I had my doctor's appointment and I was 1/2 centimeter dilated still. So they said, well, we have to send you home because you're having false labor. Contractions, but not dilating. False labor. Go home. I was frustrated. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm having these contractions and they're hurting and they're painful. Of course, they're contractions, but I'm going home. I'm not staying at the hospital. What in the world? So we go home. I lay in bed and tried to walk around a little bit, but oh man, it hurt. So I couldn't do that. So I laid in bed because I didn't get a lot of sleep that night, obviously. And every contraction I was holding on to the headboard of our bed, just trying to like relax the bottom part of my body, but like tighten up the top part. And oh my goodness, they were horrible. So finally later that afternoon, still contracting, they started to get more intense that evening actually. So they were like 4 minutes apart and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to go to the hospital. These are horrible. I swear, like I have to have dilated to like 7. You go to 10, right? 7, I thought 7. Go to the hospital, oh, you're 1 centimeter now. Y'all, they send you home when you are less than 4 centimeters. 4 centimeters or less, you go home. You don't stay in the hospital, you go home unless your water broke. My water was not broken, I was contracting, and I was not dilating. For the second time, I got sent home again. A woman, overdue, contracting, going home for the second time. I was in tears. It was horrible. So we go home and finally about 34 hours into contracting, it was like so intense. I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Something came out. I don't know if it was more the mucus plug, sorry, or my water. So I was like, oh my gosh, it was like a scene from the movie. I told my dad, you drive, Paul was in the back with me, my husband, and my sister and mom are in the other car because we needed 2 cars. So it was like a movie scene. I was like, you know, there with my husband and I was like, oh my gosh, do you see anything? Is the head out? And just like contracting. And I was like, run the red light, go, like crazy, crazy. So somebody had called the hospital and told them like, we're on the way. She's probably gonna give labor soon. We get to the hospital. Here comes the nurses. They're sitting out there with the wheelchair ready to like either deliver right there or hurry and wheel me in. And they looked and they wheeled me in. And then they went when I was in there and said, oh, you're still 1 centimeter dilated. And I lost it. I just started crying and crying. 34 hours of contractions. 34 hours of contractions. And they wanted to send me home for the 3rd time. 3 times. You don't do that to a pregnant woman, and especially you don't call it false labor just because I wasn't dilating. A lot of people don't dilate. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I just start crying as soon as the nurse is like, oh, you're still 1 centimeter. And I'm like, I just cry, and she's, what are you doing? Knock it off. Stop it. This isn't helping you. This isn't helping the baby. And went off on me. A pregnant woman, overdue, 34 hours of contracting, and she's yelling at me? I should have been yelling at her. So she's going off on me, like, this isn't helping you, this isn't helping the baby, and just like mean, mean, mean. So I stop, and she's like, why are you crying? I said, because you're gonna send me home for the 3rd time. So luckily they let me stay for an hour, and then I got up to go to the bathroom, and water broken. I was like, what is that? And then it's my water, obviously. So I got to stay in the hospital, finally. They didn't send me home. They couldn't, my water broke. After my water broke, the nurse came in and was like, do you want an epidural? And I was like, no, I'm gonna do it natural. Like, my plan is to do it all natural, all natural. My husband looks at me and he's like, you need to get the epidural. My family looked at me and they're like, you need the epidural. 38 hours of contracting without anything. And then I still had to go and push this little, like, big watermelon out of me. Hello? Yeah. So I went against my birth plan because a plan is a plan, but you never know how it's actually gonna go, especially in birth. So I got the epidural, and the epidural was nice because obviously it took away the pain from the contractions and I couldn't feel them. I was looking at the monitor, I was like, oh yeah, that's a big one. Don't feel anything. But I was laying on the bed for 30 more hours, not able to move my lower body. Every time I wanted to move to one side or the other, I had to have the nurse and my husband help me to move, and it was miserable. Oh my goodness. So finally on June 9th, my birthday, June 9th, about 8 o'clock, they're like, okay, it's time to start pushing. All of that time, and now it's time to start pushing. I was like, oh my gosh, it's coming, it's happening. Is he gonna be born on my birthday? Is it gonna be June 10th? What's happening? He said, okay, 1 to 3 hours usually women push. I was like, I think I can get this in like 5 pushes or less. 3.5 hours later, he was out. 3.5 and a ton of pushing. So I was hanging off, my butt was hanging off the end of the table, and I had my husband on my neck, my sister on one leg, my mom on the other leg, and my dad on my back, like helping me, because every time you contract and push, you have to push in like you're doing this crunch with your whole body. And after the first 30 minutes, I couldn't do it myself. So everyone was having to help me to crunch in as I pushed. So 3.5 hours of that, and then the little one finally came. And he came, and they put him on my chest, and oh, my little baby. It was just so sweet. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is my baby. This is mine. Like, he came from me. All that pain and everything was him. But then I was like, wait a minute, he's not crying. Why isn't he crying? And I started to freak out. Looking at my sister, I'm like, why isn't he crying? Why isn't he crying? Okay, so they take him and put him over with the nurses. There was like 5 nurses working on him. And I was just, and then the doctor was sewing me up. I'm like, oh my, what is this? So I'm trying to look over at my baby like, oh my gosh, why isn't he crying? I'm not hearing him. Like, Paulo, go over there. Like, go with him. I'm fine. Like, go to him, because why isn't he crying? So finally, after, I don't know, it seemed like an eternity, but finally I heard his little cry. And I was just so happy, and finally he just kept crying after that. until they finally brought him over on me and placed him on my chest. And he just looked right up at me with his big dark eyes, and he stopped crying and he was just looking at me. And then it was okay. It was hard still, but I had my baby and he was fine and he was healthy. So then June 9th, 2017 at 11:36 p.m., my little baby Benjamin Clifford Mello was born. He was 7 pounds 12 ounces and 21.5 inches long. My little baby was born. It was hard, obviously. 68 hours of being in labor and what they called some false labor. Not false. I told them to quit saying that because when you're contracting, it's not false. And it wasn't just Braxton Hicks. It was not. 68.5 hours of labor was rough, and 3.5 of that of pushing, even worse. It was terrible, but what was really hard for me was afterwards, being postpartum. And I've written a blog on different tips for postpartum moms because it's hard. Not a lot of people talk about it, what happens afterwards. Maybe I'll make another video for that part because it's real. Like, postpartum is rough. That's my birth story. And let me show you my baby. This is my baby. Benjamin Clifford Mello. You say hi. Look at the camera. Look. Up here. Oh. Say hi. Hi. It was rough, but obviously this little guy, so worth it. And I mean, definitely want more. If I could just multiply him, I would have tons more babies. If they're as good as you. Thanks for listening to my birth story. Share below, what about yours? Tell us about yours. So, thanks, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye. 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 Ciao, ciao, ciao. Ciao, ciao, ciao. So 68 hours of labor, and I was like, are you kidding me? What? Hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing? What are you doing? Huh? You trying to take over my video? You're trying to take over? Hello? I'm talking. Thank you very much. It's my turn. You want to share about why you were so stubborn to come out? You want to tell people? Tell them. Tell me. Why'd you take so long? Huh? Oh, because Mama was so comfortable. Oh, okay. All right, fine. I'll take it.